You are listening to Missed Apex Podcast. We love MotoGP. Hello and welcome to Missed Apex MotoGP Podcast. This is a show put together by MotoGP fans pretending to be experts. We aim to have a race review show ready for a midweek commute. We may just be punters, but we love to talk. Cold, difficult, scary, unpredictable, and that was just the British fans who attended an epic, albeit slightly empty race at Silverstone, which delivered us heartbreak and jubilation in equal measure. As ever, I am your host, Kyle Power, and today I am going to apologise to you because I am ill, so please excuse my voice being incredibly croaky throughout this show. But somebody who never sounds croaky is our lovable co-host, Jules Seegers. How's it going, Jules?
Well, flattering. Thanks, Carl. So many emotions on our MotoGP screens this weekend. Let's talk about them.
Absolutely brilliant. And somebody else who doesn't sound croaky, but he does sound quite northern, it's Danny Henney. How's it going, Danny?
Hey, Kyle, good to be back. And as usual now, it's becoming a bit of a theme, an exciting race to talk about.
Indeed, we've had a mental last couple of races, but before we talk about that, we're just going to give a quick weekend overview. So coming into this weekend, Aleix Espargaro, much to the despise of Frankie Morbidelli, returns for a wild card. KTM have been saved by a huge $600 million investment from an Indian company, which is great news to hear. And there was a bit of a Jorge Martin and Aprilia spat going on, as Aprilia basically said, hands off, don't go near Jorge Martin, and he hasn't responded yet. And amongst all of this, there's a championship going on. So Marquez has a 22-point lead. Marc Marquez has a 22-point lead over his brother Alex, with Bagnaia a further 51 points back. Morbidelli, as ever, in fourth, with Digi in fifth. So practice qualifying then, guys, and it was windy, fast and windy. It was quite nice on the Friday, but Saturday the conditions started to change for the worse a little bit. Both Alex and Marc were down, having crashes and losing the front, but the big crash was Ugura having a nasty high side between turn 1 and 2. That looked really bad, and I think he's fractured his leg. I think it's a tibia. He's fractured his right leg, so he missed the rest of the weekend, which is a shame. But Jules, Bez was looking quick on the Aprilia, like all the way through practice. This looks like an Aprilia sort of favourable track.
It looks like it, and it comes just at the right time because, as you just referred to, there's a bit of a spat going on between their star rider, who's never really ridden for them yet, Jorge Martin, and the factory team. So, and Baz hasn't had really anything to brag about this season, but there he was from FP1 on during all Friday and basically Saturday up until Q2. He was really fast and he was up there, and some smart people even put them in their MotoGP fantasy teams, I noticed. So he was on it, and we would see a lot more of him later on.
Absolutely, and it shouldn't be much of a surprise that Aprilia are looking good at Silverstone, because what's something we have said it so many times on this podcast, that they're great with the ground effect and they're super, like their strength is fast corners. So that was really good to see. So and another little mention I want to give just in quali while we're skimming over this is Luca Marini getting through to Q2 again, which is really, really good, which is really nice. And we don't often get a chance to say many good things about him, but the KTMs were having a mare, no KTMs at all through to Q2. They were looking terrible, but the real star of the show once again in Q2, Fabio Quartararo, amazing. It does it again, a lap record again. So 3 poles on the bounce on the unfavoured Yamaha, absolutely amazing. Alex Marquez gets second. Bagnaia looked extremely happy to get third because, well, he'd been struggling. Again, we've been struggling, and this is the first time we've seen him actually outpace his teammate, Marc. Marc was struggling as well. Marc, I think, was on a monstrous lap and then kept having moments in Copse. I think he had a huge moment in Copse, and then again in Stowe, and he just basically had to back out of the lap. And we saw a lot of that over the races. Fast right-hand corners really highlighted Marquez's struggle here. So a very intriguing sort of grid setup there. Aldeguer got 5th, but we had 2 Hondas and 3 Yamahas through to Q2. So Jack Miller was up there as well, and Rins, who's been having a bit of a nightmare of a season. Really good. And notably, Marco Bezzecchi. Jules saying he had really good pace all weekend, only in 11th after having a bit of a compromised sort of balked session. So that set up a salivating prospect for the sprint. Okay, on to the sprint review then. And the first thing I want to talk about here, guys, it was the crazy first lap from Mark, basically. The crazy start from fourth, swooping around the outside of turn one, and then nailing everyone, getting into the lead before having that horrible mistake going wide. I think, was that lap 2? I think he went wide and let Alex through, and then that was it from there. So, Danny, your boy Alex, what about that performance in the sprint?
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it? It was. I thought it was unfortunately going to follow the usual script when Mark hit the front of the queue, because he just looked fast off the line. Again, he's done this a few times though when he's qualified not on pole. He's kind of gone after everybody early on, hit the front, and then kind of managed the race. So I thought it was game over. But yeah, he did well to stay on the bike actually when you watch how much it's skipping around into the braking zone. But yeah, Alex took full advantage, hit the front, and yeah, it was a pleasure to see him bag them points, bring the gap down a little bit. But obviously had Sunday to come. But yeah, fantastic performance. I think he's riding really well, consistent, and for once didn't just settle for the second when he took the full points.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Jules, it's kind of interesting to see, because I think this is the first time we'd ever actually seen Alex on merit actually beat Mark.
It didn't feel like the first time, but it was the first time where on racecraft and pace, Mark didn't really look like he was toying with Alex and that he was going to pass him at ever which point he would choose to. And in fact, in the last couple of laps of the sprint, Mark dropped massively. His tires were shot, and we saw that with more of the GP25s. But yeah, Mark really had this going for him, and it was maybe a sign of things to come. But yeah, it just didn't feel like Mark, despite being fast on the Friday, like he really felt comfortable to push over a whole lap. And Silverstone is a bit of a tricky track because it's very long and it has all sorts of bits, long straights, fast corners, really slow corners. And it appeared to be really hard to make that GP25 be like consistent throughout that whole lap. It's the longest track of the calendar, and he just didn't seem to find a comparison. How do you say it? A compromise between all these different types of track.
What you could really see was the difference between the riders. Mark had said that he was struggling at the track already pretty much most of the weekend, and that Alex was the favourite. But you could really see how much Mark was struggling in the right-handers compared to Alex. Oh, we say struggling, don't get me wrong. He's just going at normal pace of everybody else. But you could see the amount of time he can gain in the left-handers compared to when it hit a right, the gap had opened back up. But I think what I have picked up on a lot, and probably most other people as well, is Mark in that situation, 9 times out of 10, how close he was in positions, throws a move at you, just a real aggressive move to go at you. He doesn't seem like he's willing to do that with his brother, purely, I should imagine, because it's his brother. But it's really nice to see he's not willing to do a risky move to ruin his brother's race. Obviously, everybody else we know he would do. But I'm liking the respect. I think it's a real good battle we're starting to see. And now with the points gap after we discussed the race, I think that there's only one contender for me now, and that is Alex.
Yeah. That's a good point. And like I said, it was 22 points coming in, and he reduced it down to, what was it, I think it was 18 or something now, like after the sprint. So really strong by Alex. But yeah, when I say it's the first time sort of beaten Mark, like when he's finished ahead of him, Mark's beaten himself. He's crashed and done something silly. Like, this is the first time I can ever recall in MotoGP, I think, where in a straight fight on track that Alex has generally just outperformed him. Like, Mark had it covered. And something quite poignant, they're all running the soft front. So all the soft front tyres. And you could see that Alex has he controlled and kept that front tyre. Because as Jules mentioned it, Mark drastically fell off the cliff in terms of front tyre. And also we saw his teammate, Bagnaia. Bagnaia had a bit of a shocker. So he was running quite well. He was kind of running in third, and he was keeping in touch with him. And then I think it's from about lap 6 onwards, he just plummeted. His pace just fell off a cliff, and it's weird. We've seen this. I'll get my Formula One reference in early. We've seen this in Formula One where the tyres hit the cliff and they just all of a sudden just lose all their pace. And this happened to Bagnaia, and he dropped down. And where was he? Yeah, I think he finished here 6th in the end, didn't he? He just got absolutely mugged and dropped down. So it was amazing. Somebody else who was dropping down was also Fabio Quartararo from that pole position, and we just saw a bit of delimitation, really, didn't we, of the Yamaha, of him like trying to bolt, and if he couldn't get out front and make a break, then he just was just getting mugged basically, and the Yamaha has to carry the corner speed, so he couldn't do that. But somebody else who was carrying loads of corner speed was Bez. So like Jules, he had a bit of a shocking start.
Yeah, it was this Friday, as we said, was really good. Then on Saturday during Q2, he had his last fast lap compromise, starting from P11, bit of a letdown compared to the practice sessions. And then after the start, he couldn't disengage his whole shot device. It took him until turn 4 to get that done. And Silverstone is a bit of a weird track in that aspect, a bit like Le Mans. It doesn't really have a hard brake first turn, and you need that to disengage that whole shot device after the start. And he didn't manage to do that, and he dropped back to P19, which is like, wow, that's like almost the back of the field. Yeah. But he wasn't held back by that. He didn't rest his head. He put the throttle down. He had this incredible pace, and he came up, and I think it was eventually P4 that he finished in the sprint. Yeah, so that was just a really, really great comeback, and you could just see the pace that Aprilia had in this track that has less of hard braking zones and more flowing and keep your downforce while having good speed through those fast corners. And it was a joy to see, and good to see all these different brands at the front of the field.
That's it. It's a great thing, because everyone's been moaning this year about the Ducati Cup, and we kind of almost had it in the sprint. But like I said, 2 Hondas and 3 Yamahas into Q2. The Aprilia, arguably in the sprint, Danny, looking like the fastest bike out there. So to come back from P19 to P4, not only the great race pace, you have to have the ability to be able to put it on a line and pass people. Yeah,
Bez just looked like he was on rails. When you looked at him on that bike compared to everybody else, you could clearly see that bike working faster through the corners. And like you say, it's got the bits on the bike to give it more downforce. Silverstone is a believe it or not, a high downforce track, really. When you look at it, it's what you want. And he looked like he could set the riders up where he wanted and just ride past at will. And yeah, coming back from how far down he was an amazing ride, and a pleasure to see, because we've had the question marks around Aprilia. They've put all their eggs in the basket with Martin. Bez has kind of been the forgotten man. So it was nice to see him, grasp the bull by the horns and get out there and deliver a solid result and set up a tantalising Sunday.
Absolutely. So somebody else who, well, he kind of almost went missing on Sunday, but someone else had a really great result in the sprint was Digi. So we haven't seen Digi. I think it's the first time we've seen him on the podium this year, was it not? Because let's not forget, Digi's also on the GP25, which at most other tracks is a blessing, but seemed to be a bit of a curse at Silverstone this year. So he ended up coming from P7 into P3, and he was closing quite fast on Mark in the end, I think, as well. So it looked like so everyone was running the soft front tyre, so that was going off. But again, Mark looked like he chewed the tyre way more than most other people. Like both of the factory Ducatis, both of the Lenovo bikes, the red ones, both chewed, particularly Bagnaia. They were just ploughing the front, looked awful, but Digi looked like he had it a bit more under control. So in the end, Alex Marquez comes over and wins by a whopping, and you say it's a whopping thing in the sprint, by 3.5 seconds, which is a huge gap in MotoGP. Marc Marquez in second, Digi in third, Bez quite an incredible fourth, really. Zarco, still really good, still being there on the Honda. He's not going away. Zarco fifth, Bag sixth, and Fabio ended up dropping down to seventh in the end. But he had more bad things to come as we go into the Grand Prix. So a few topics, major topics I want to talk about really, but the Grand Prix, and we have to start again. Let's give some more Bez love and Aprilia, but you know, this is Aprilia finally showing up, but is this Bez finally showing up as well? Because as Danny mentioned, like he's kind of been the forgotten about rider this year, but I think he's kind of forgotten about himself because look at all that promise in pre-season. He looked again like he had a really good race pace, and he's not really delivered, Danny, until today.
Yeah, I think Bez has looked at the situation with all the, I'm going to use the word negativity around Martin and the rumours and wanting to get out to Honda. I think he's seen an opportunity where, like as I said a minute ago, the team's kind of gone around Martin, put all their eggs in the basket, and I think he's seen an opportunity to go, wait a minute, I can turn this ship around and get everybody focused on me. I can be that lead rider if I just start getting some solid results. And boy, did he stand up and deliver. And I think it's kind of rejuvenated him. He just looked more at ease on the bike. He looked like he was enjoying it a lot more from his body language, whereas the last couple of races he's looked to struggle a bit more. He just looked like someone out there who was having fun and, yeah, got around the track faster than most people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jules, we kind of it feels a bit weird talking about Bez first because I think everyone is like consoling with Fabio Quartararo. We'll get onto him in a minute, but quite a lot of people saying he's kind of won this because of attrition. Like Matt Trumpets, who was not with us today, said this in our group chat, like he kind of won it on attrition, but I'm not so sure because his pace was mega. By the time he got into actually second, I think he was about 5.4 seconds away from Quartararo, but he took a whole second out of that lead and got it down to like 4 seconds within about 3 laps. So, I don't know. Quartararo did respond, but do you think he could have caught Quartararo had Quartararo not had the problem?
The thing we can go on from this is the Saturday performance. And we just mentioned that Bezzecchi's Saturday performance was really strong, coming all the way from the back. And we saw Fabio struggling on the soft front on Saturday. And for Sunday, he bolted on the soft again. So my feeling is, and despite I would really like to see Fabio win a race again rather sooner than later. I doubt he would have held on to it because it's just like you said, we weren't even halfway through the Sunday race when Bez was already chipping away at a certain rate the deficit he had to Fabio. So my feeling says, unfortunately for Fabio, but this was Bez's.
Yeah, Danny, it was going to be quite close. Like Quartararo did end up responding, but I think I'm semi with Jules. I was actually watching this race in a pub with several other people, and I said don't count Bez out. I think Bez could actually win this race, but I was really impressed to see Quartararo respond. He almost got it back up to sort of 5 seconds again, but yeah, I think maybe coming into the closing laps, we never got to see that Yamaha and whether Bez kept his tyres in or not. So Jules reckons Bez would have caught Quartararo. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I've got to be in that camp as well. I would have loved Quartararo to have held on for it, but I just think you got to look at the tyre life. The softs were already struggling in the Saturday race, which is significantly shorter, and then you're looking at Bez, he's on the medium, he's making that work a lot better than everybody else. It's just inevitable. Quartararo may have been able to do it, but certainly the early signs when Bez took that big chunk out of him weren't looking positive for him. But as I said, like on last weekend as well, that once you get that potential to win a race, it's like they got to another gear. So we saw it with Zarco got to the front last time out, and he raised his game. I think you saw that with Bezzecchi. I think once he got into second and he could see, Quartararo's just up the road, I think he'd found another gear. Took that big chunk out of him. Quartararo kind of pegged him back. But I think overall tyre life would have ended up being the deciding factor. Because it weren't going to be the bikes really, because you'd probably say on the straights they're pretty similar. But that Aprilia that's something else through the corners at high speed.
Yeah, really good. Well, a few two were saying he was going to catch Quartararo. I'm going to stick up for Bez and say, no, I don't think he wouldn't. I reckon Quartararo was going to have him covered. He was going to have him covered and go away. This is brilliant. And yeah, so Bez knows how to win a Grand Prix. It's been 600 days since his last win, mind you. Great stat, Jules. Nice one. Which is India, 2023. So do we think this performance is like a flash in the pan, a one-off Silverstone special? Because it was an odd weekend of like weird weather and performance. Like Danny, yeah, you definitely think this is a one-off.
Yeah, 100%. One-off. Very rarely do you see Mark struggle at any track, really, when he's kind of got the equipment he's got on him. You know, Alex as well, having his own struggles. The main contenders all had their own kind of issues to deal with, which kind of opened the door for Bezzecchi. I don't think he was lucky. I think he made the best of the equipment he'd got, but I think normally he's going to be struggling to get P7, P8 if all the Ducatis are doing well at a track. So I'd love it to be a bit more. I love Bezzecchi. I'd like him to get a few more races in, but I think this will be a flash in the pan, unfortunately.
Gotta agree with that. We agree too much today, but maybe later
What's going on here?
We'll fight. But the thing is, Bezzecchi has had trouble stringing a decent weekend together for the whole season, and maybe even for last season as well, for different reasons. But and even this weekend, starting from 11, a bit of a shame. I think it was a perfect storm for him and Aprilia. As Danny rightfully says, the main contenders were all out. Then even Fabio drops out. And the main problem for the Aprilia this season is struggle in warm temperatures, having stability problems while entering hard braking zones, entering those types of corners. And it was chilly at Silverstone on Sunday, especially, like massive wind gusts. You saw on the grid riders covering themselves up in winter coats and that sort of stuff. So it was ideal to have those kind of temperatures at a track like Silverstone. And then, get some people out of the way. I mean, I don't want to take away anything from Baz, and I'm really happy for him. And if you saw the images of him afterwards, he was so joyful that he didn't know how to express it, and he fell on the ground. And, having a new haircut as well, the mullet, it was all just, everything came together at the right time for him. But let's hope for Aprilia's sake, and I think we should mention that this is a boost, and this is something that makes them believe in themselves and leave the Jorge Martin negativity, first injuries, and then him wanting to leave that behind and focus on how to get this bike better and do it with Baz and maybe with Jorge later on.
I do love Bezzecchi, but I must admit my only concern with him is he's at risk of becoming a bit like Morbidelli. He can kind of be non-existent, and then he'll bang in a fantastic result, and then he'll go back off the radar. And I really hope he breaks that trend. Like I say, I'm a massive fan of him. Hope he can get a few more races and be at the front a bit more. But I'm very concerned that he's starting to turn a bit like Morbidelli. And I love Morbidelli as well, but he's nowhere. Then he'll have a flash in the pan great result, and then he'll go back to being, towards the bottom of the top 10. So fingers crossed he don't end up like that.
You mean being like Morbidelli, getting in the way of people on qualifying laps or in practice laps and stuff like that, and being a general bit of a bandit? In Morbidelli's defence, he's still fourth in the championship. He's been solid, but he's been solidly unspectacular, hasn't he? Like, he's been absolutely solidly solid. Basically, like you can say, but no, I see what you mean. And for Bez's sake, I hope his performances carry on this way, because, I mean, what's going on with that hairdo and the mullet? He needs to be strong and have these mega performances to get away with that mullet. I mean, if you're a MotoGP race winner, you can get away with that, but that's heinous. That's awful. What's going on, Bez, man? He needs to sort that out. That is actually terrible. Not a big fan of that. One thing I was quite a big fan of, and I like a bit of the needle, it's kind of, well, or was it a bit of needle? That message from Massimo Rivallo at the end of I probably just murdered his name there, at the end of the race, saying, like, this is a message for Jorge, our bike can win. Oof. Jules, was that like positive, or was that a bit of a passive aggressive little dig?
At first, and of course, we like a bit of needle and stuff like that. When I read it, I thought like, oh, that's spicy, especially after the team statement at the beginning of the weekend. They were like hands-off warning to other teams, and contract is contract. But then when you heard it. And it was, and when you listen to some other stuff they said, I interpret it as if they approach this in let's heal together way, and throw Jorge Martin a bone, and let's try and mend this. And maybe that's the only sensible way, because if they ever want to get Martin on board again, they need to mend their relationship and to get along with each other. So I thought it was like more like, see, Jorge, you can win with us. Come join us again when you feel like it, and whether that's a bit weak or maybe I don't know, is knee jerk the right word for this? Like when you
maybe was like an emotional sort of message go out saying, yes, we can. I think you touched on it exactly right there. Yeah, Danny, I think Jules got it right. This is maybe about healing. They want to make it work with Jorge, but the relationship surely is damaged.
Yeah. Stick the knife in. That's what I want to see. A bit of needle, like you said. This championship's been way too nice so far. Where's all the falling at? You know what I mean? Where's the bit of needle?
Not between team manager and his own rider. Not see it between teams.
Yeah, but it don't sit right with me with the Jorge Martin thing. I like Jorge Martin. I really do. He's a fantastic rider. But it's just disrespectful as anything what he's done. He's kind of upped. He's not even given him a chance really to kind of get on the bike. He's injured himself, and then he's already trying to get out for another team. Now, if he was trying to get into the top Ducati team or another Ducati bike again, I could understand it. But it's Honda. It's not even Yamaha. It's Honda.
Yeah.
So I don't get. He's kind of causing a load of frustration for nothing. So I thought it was great. Personally, it was something I'd have done, a little bit of a slide dig at him in the press to kind of say, you think the grass is greener elsewhere, son? Look, we can deliver the results what we promised. You've just got to give us a bit of time.
The thing is, and maybe that's what makes me feel like this was a healing type of remark, is what Aleix Espargaro said at the beginning of the weekend, because he was questioned by the media, being Jorge's friend, and did you talk him into wanting to go to Honda? And he's pretty much the only thing he really said was like, we don't know how Jorge feels or has felt this season and the last couple of weeks. And that was interpreted as like, okay, maybe he's in not a great mental state. And let's not put the word depression on everything very easily. I don't think that's sensible and right. But I thought that hinted at like listen, guys, you don't know the how dark the place is where he's at or where he's been, and maybe Aprilia knows a bit more about that and thought, we don't achieve anything, going in with a 2-footed tackle. Let's approach this the other way and make him feel like he's still welcome and there's still an open door. So Jorge responded early in the weekend with like, you'll hear my side of the story soon, on his Instagram, a bit cryptic. And afterwards, on Sunday, he congratulated Bezzecchi and Aprilia. So, who knows? Maybe things will come to a good end after all.
I'll tell you what, he's going to be interesting when he comes back in the garage, and the body language between the mechanics and himself, and to see how he does on that bike, because he looked great when he was on the bike in the race he could do. He'd done quite a good performance.
Until he didn't.
Wow. Yeah, but he, in general, I meant for how smashed up he is. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the body language is like when he comes back, because it's going to be frosty. It's going to be like them instances where you kind of say something about someone and you think, yeah, they're not there, and then all of a sudden they walk in the room and it just goes, whoa, a bit quiet.
Oh.
And it's like, who's going to pose the question first? But fingers crossed they can mend it. Jokes aside about wanting to see the needle and that, he's a very good rider. I think Aprilia are on the way up, certainly compared to Honda. And I think if they can come back, worse things have been put as water under the bridge in different sports. So if he can come back, get his head down, get some results, this will quickly be forgotten and they'll be laughing about it at the end of the season.
Yeah, brilliant. And so just fantastic result for Bez and Aprilia. And as I said, we're big Jorge Martin fans here. We want the relationship to work. And this is just, you couldn't have timed it better to get a result like this when they're trying to coax him in. There's a bit of back and forth. Fantastic. So we need to move on to a bit of heartbreak. That's all of the happy news for Bez gone. Fabio Quartararo and the ride height devices. So let's sum his race up a little bit. Yes, he took the soft tyre, which actually was not a gamble this time. The soft tyre has not really done a race distance. It's not really ever survived the race distance, this particular soft front tyre. But as Jules alluded to, the wonderful British springtime was delivering us some Arctic sort of chills and breeze, and we saw with other people having problems getting the medium fired up, but the soft tyre. So Fabio, amazing start, broke, he bolted, and within, I think it was in 2 laps, he had almost 2 seconds within 2 laps. On the first. Not on the first start, yeah, on the second start. I keep forgetting about the restart madness. We will approach that a little bit in our next topic. He bolted, he got a great lead and went off, and he pulled that lead out to 5.4 seconds. It was incredible by the time Bez got in, and he was motoring. And I said before, I'm not sure Bez would have caught him. I think for how he thinks it, and I think how a lot of other people think it, for all intents and purposes, he had the race won. He basically had the race won, and he could have just cruised. The tyre was looking good. His pace was still looking good. Yes, he did struggle a little bit in the sprint, and he did have a very fast Bezzecchi coming up behind him. But I think the poignant thing here with Quartararo, just before I go to Jules, is Jack Miller was also really quick and up there and on the soft tyre, and was still quite quick at the end, Jules. So just stunning performance from Quartararo. And before we get onto the ride height devices, just amazing. It's so good to see. He's not lost any of his flair or talent.
Yeah, I think, and these types of stories come up once a guy like Fabio is performing well again. It's like, is he behind Marc Marquez the most talented, the most naturally gifted rider of the pack, and which is something else than saying therefore you are the best rider, because if you're a professor like rider you can also be really good. But still, it's just great to see that he doesn't need the perfect bike or everything to be in place to pull out a performance like that. And the early gap, the big gap, was a bit helped by the fight between Miller and who overtook Bagnaia. And that tussle gave him a bit of a gap, and that's exactly what he needed, because it feels like the Yamaha of this moment, with some updates in the last couple of races. They have had a couple of tests giving the concessions. They brought some new tiny bits of arrows this weekend, and it seems like if he gets clear air, if he can dictate the pace, and that goes for a lot of riders, of course. When you lead, you determine the tempo, etc. But it really helps him to ride that bike exactly the way it needs to be ridden to extract that kind of pace. And the moment he finds himself in a group or in a fight, of course that becomes a lot harder. But the Yamaha is no Ducati, who rides corners smooth as anything. So I think when Fabio manages to be in front. And at Jerez, it lasted about 2 laps. In Le Mans, we didn't really get to see it because of all those circumstances. But another 2 weeks further, and you just see the Yamaha getting better and better in that race trim.
Mark my words, I said it last time, Misano. I'm going for Misano. Put money on Quartararo, take the win there. It's a lot more of a track suited to the Yamaha. I think he'll run well. As you said, heartbreaking. I'm still recovering now from it. Them scenes were really emotional to watch him at the side of the track, and it just, the guy wants it so much. He's been on that bike, he's been struggling. You can just feel his pain, and I think it's a shame for his talent, because I watched something the other day and they were ranking, not so much MotoGP riders, but like a ranking video on YouTube, etc. And I got thinking, where would I put him? For me, Quartararo, I think, is the next generation. I think Jules picked up on the talent, etc. For me personally, I think everybody's behind Marc Marquez from a talent point of view. I think he's just above everybody. But I think Quartararo's on that second rung, if you will. And if I do, I'll use my F1 reference. He's like Charles Leclerc, I think. He has rapid pace and ultimate promise, but he can just make the odd mistake here and there. I mean, it wasn't his mistake this weekend. It was obviously the bike, but I just think he's still a little bit prone to a fall here and there, or to push too much. And I think there's quite a few of them. But what a talent. And he just... It's not going to be long, is it? I think Jules is on the right track. We said that he seems to be getting closer. He's got a pole. He's led for 2 laps. He's led for, roughly half the race here. So fingers crossed he can bag one before the end of the season, because as we said before, we need Yamaha back in the hunt. Honda as well. We just need more bikes to bring more entertainment and more people to nick wins off. I remember the season, well, it feels like ages ago now, but you remember when Miller got his first win in the wet, and a couple of the other bikes were taking wins off here and there, and there's a few random instances. We want that. We don't want one manufacturer dominating. So, yeah, heartbreak for Quartararo. But, fingers crossed he can come good at the end. I'm still too emotional. You're going to have to move on. Hurts too much.
That's one of the things I like about him the most, is just a heart on sleeve emotion. And we saw the dark side of it in Le Mans, where he's freaking out with the marshals, and he completely owned that as well. He seems such a lovely guy. It's just quite emotional. And this collapsing on the side of the track, bawling his eyes out, having his best mate, you could see him talking to him in his helmet, telling him like he'd won that race. And apparently later on in his media session, he was doing all right. Someone asked him whether this was his opportunity, and he lost it and broke down in tears again. I love the fact that he's not shy to see it, and that's how much it means to him. And I think he genuinely knew that this was the chance, like this was his golden chance. He did everything right, and it was taken away from him. Absolutely robbed. And I do think he probably would have hung on, because Miller being in there, and Jules touched on it earlier, it's really good. Like the Yamaha, is a momentum bike. You need to carry the corner speed and the sweeping lines of momentum, because we could visibly see it. They lack the punch, the point and squirt ability of the Ducati and other bikes. They're probably the slowest bike in a straight line, the Yam. So he just had it, got it, and he was robbed. I want to talk a little bit now about ride height devices, because I really respect Simon Patterson. I always see him on his tweets and stuff like that, and he's always going to... I more often than not find myself kind of disagreeing with some of his views. I don't agree with his flag-to-flag sort of race views. And he was not happy about ride height devices. So I'm going to ask a question to my panel. Jules, are ride height devices evil?
Yes, they are evil and dangerous and irrelevant to all the rest of the motoring world.
Danny, what's your thought on ride height devices?
Great technology. I like what they've done and how they brought the bike on, but rip them off. You've no my view on it. Get back to the mid-2000s. Take all this stuff off. I want to see bikes slide in, the rider making a difference. Great technology, but please remove it off the bikes.
I'm somewhere in the middle, really. Like I love the engineering side. I love progression, and I like sort of some slight openness in the rules, and I love innovation. And I look at ride height devices they're very innovative. This is a great innovation. Once one team did it, and I think who bought it, was it Ducati? I think who bought it first, and now everyone has to copy them and now do it. Yes, Jules is exactly right. They don't add anything to road bikes or road relevance or anything, Jules. But I think the technology is pretty cool, but I think it does slightly hurt the racing. But I kind of quite like him in a weird way. I'm probably very limited. I'm probably not one of many people who has that view.
Yeah, no, I just said because I thought let's not agree on everything tonight. But of course, we want, I think, I think most fans want MotoGP to be the pinnacle of motorcycling sports. And these kind of innovations and technical revolutions belong to that. And it doesn't really matter whether it's road relevant or not, because, you know, you want it to be like the top notch of the sport. But it's one time too many that we see like things like this happen, riders getting robbed of or getting into dangerous situations, because the Alex Marquez crash in the first race start, he wasn't even at turn one, and he lost his front, was also due to not being able to release that whole shot device properly, and a cold tire, and now and I don't know if everybody can recall the image, but you saw him sliding over that piece of tarmac. That is pretty much the Formula One runoff of that straight, and this was at starting speed. But imagine things would have gone wrong on his first having completed his first lap.
And that's what he said. He wasn't too happy about it at all. He was like, imagine if that happened really, really quick. He wasn't happy about the runoff down there. He wanted some gravel.
Yeah, and so it's just. Technical innovation is cool, but not when the sporting performances or cool results are getting affected by it in a negative way. And I understand we can't have it all, but I don't think we'll miss them really when they are gone for 27. Although I have to say the images of the starting grid and seeing those bikes lowering and see how close they are to the ground, I mean, that's cool, isn't it?
Yeah, they're cool, and as you rightfully say, I think they are being either completely disallowed or they're being heavily limited for 2027. So I say let's embrace them whilst we have them, but we don't like them when they deprive our Fabio of a win. But before we move on to our next subject, don't deprive yourselves of having your input into the show. You can email us at missedapexmoto. That's missedapexmoto@gmail.com. That's missedapexmoto with a capital M @gmail.com. Send us in your comments and your thoughts. We do respond to your emails. And if you've got any suggestions for the show, or if you're an insider and you'd like to appear on the show, then definitely we'll be interested to hear from you. So the next topic I want to talk about is something quite interesting, and that's the Ducati mystery at this round. And we've got quite a lot to wrap up in this topic because, wow, on the Sundays we saw an awful lot of struggles. And as Jules just said, the Alex Marquez crash at this start, and we have to talk about the first start, which I'd almost forgotten, and quite how lucky both the Marquezes were, like incredibly lucky. Like Mark said it after the race, like we're the luckiest family in racing this weekend, because so Alex bidding it straight off the start with quite a horrible crash, quite scary. Again, cold medium tire, really cold track, and not being able to disengage that rear ride height device, the whole shot advice. He goes down. Mark on lap 2 was looking really strong in the lead, and it was similar to again, it's another front wheel tuck going into Beckett's. Really fast, and I love the fact how he held on to it for so long and headbutted the bales. It was a complete headbutt, and the headbutt, he kind of leans into it, Danny. You can see he comes in, he's like donk.
Yeah, that's what I was about to put my hand up and go, please let me get in the headbutt. It was brilliant. He's sliding down the road, holding onto the bike. I'd actually seen some video from the crowd. Someone's like videoing him on their phone. Yeah, because he's taking some speed. He just like, bang, get out of the way, bike back up, I'm off, and away we go. So it was unfortunate for him, but it was a great thing to watch, just to show his mentality is going down. And he just hangs on to the bike as he's sliding down the road. And you can tell he's thinking, it's damaged, but it's not too damaged, I can't get back on. But I actually think the peg come off when you look. There's something hanging off it when it comes to a stop. But yeah, great scenes, brilliant to see someone just headbutt the barge out of the way and carry on.
Thankfully, they're quite light, those things, because it worried me first when coming in. I was like, oh, that's not good. And he just fully committed to it. And that just goes to show, it's quite scary. We obviously don't want to see riders intentionally hitting things with their heads at all. But in the circumstance, it just shows the absolute commitment of him. He just fully committed. He was still holding on to the clutch and got up, and he was furious with himself for doing that mistake. But I think it was gusty wind, really cold tyre.
Yeah, what it did do as well, it had a mental impact on him for the rest of the race, because when they did the second restart and he come round, he was timid as anything. Miller pretty much nearly went round the outside of him on the first lap. It was just crazy. And you could see for the rest of the race, every time he went in, I think Hodgie picked it up on the commentary, he was just slower to tip the bike in, because you could tell he was terrified of tipping it in and just hitting the deck again. Very rarely do you see Mark look timid on the bike as he's going around the race. But yeah, hell of a mental impact to him.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get on discussing why he may have been so timid on the bike, just have to just clarify the restart rule, because even on the British comms on TNT, they even got it wrong, thinking that everyone needs to stay on the bike. And once again, unfortunately, online, I've seen some ridiculous comments of people saying it's some sort of conspiracy, because of course back in the field, Aleix going into Vale locked up and took out Morbidelli, who dropped oil on the track, and they had to red flag it. Now, I used to be a marshal. I've actually marshalled on that very corner, actually, for MotoGP in 2010. And the call for oil, everyone's sort of blaming, they reckon it was Loris Capirossi getting out there, desperately to try and find oil. The call would have come from the incident officer, the marshal there at the time, and they would have instantly seen it. And if there's any doubt, there's oil down, you cannot take a risk on down. So if there's any doubt, they're going to clear the bike. And they can clearly see that there was fluid down. They would have made the call to race control saying there's fluid on the track, red flag. We need a red flag, basically. So that's happened. And within these restart rules, it's within 3 laps. So if there's a red flag within 3 laps, it's null and voided. And regardless if you're riding your bike or not, they basically restart the race. Danny?
Yeah, I much prefer that rule. I must admit, though, I thought they'd red flagged it because one of the riders had left their handbag in the middle of the track or something for when they were getting off and having a bit of a whinge at each other.
Yeah, that was a bit of fisticuff.
Yeah, it was just funny because it looked more like Espargaro were having more of a go at Morbidelli. And when you look at it, it was him who kind of took Morbidelli out. So, yeah, interesting. But I got it wrong as well. I must admit, I was kind of with the comms. I thought you'd have to get on, get back to the track. I thought Alex was out. Sorry. So I am glad though when it turned out that all the riders could get back on the track, because I think it would have took something away from the race if Alex weren't allowed to get back in the race and Mark weren't as well, and obviously the others. So yeah, as much as a bit of confusion, I'm glad that is the rule, and I'm glad they all managed to get on the starting grid in a way well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jules, that kind of seemed to really affect both of them. Marquez is having to change the bike, and also Bagnaia changed his tyre. Both Alex and Mark changed their bikes. What happened to the GP25s and what's going on?
I can only imagine that the second bikes of both the Marquez brothers weren't really set up the way their initial race bike was, which is often the case, and it maybe even might have been set up for a bit more tricky circumstances, given the rain that had dropped on Sunday morning. And Pecco, that was really weird. He put on a new tire, but still a medium, just a new one, and he said it just slid around, and he didn't have any grip. It was nowhere, and we have seen this before, the riders claiming they have a bad tire, like one of the out of the series that's delivered by Michelin is a bad tire, but it could also be a tire that is less prepped or not scrubbed, or has been in the tire warmers for too long, or not long enough, or not enough times. So yeah, whatever it was, it was a weird drop in performance for all 3 of them.
Yeah, and they're all struggling, and Pecco particularly has been really outspoken. He's struggling on this GP25 quite a lot, and they seem to have lost quite a lot of performance. And before we maybe go and debate about is the GP25 a bit of a doomed bike, I've never seen yeah, like Pecco looked that angry before, and he was in the gravel. I was surprised he didn't instantly run and try to pick the bike up and carry on going away, because it was a very slow crash. I still think he could have maybe picked that bike up and got on. Pretty sure, if that was Mark gone down, he would have been sprinting to go and pick the bike up, not dropping to his knees and exclaiming in the gravel. But that was the sign of a broken man. He could not believe that he's gone down. He was kind of waiting for the crash. But Digi seemed to really struggle as well in the second restart on his 25. Mark obviously was then cautious. From what Danny said, he said he was really, really cautious. But Danny.
They all looked to be struggling, didn't they? It was that lap when both the Ducatis just went on at Copse. I can't remember what lap it was, but they come in and kind of Mark goes through the flashes past the camera. You don't really see Mark go off. You see Bagnaia run wide, and then all of a sudden it cuts to him and they're coming back on. It just looked like everybody on a Ducati was struggling to generate heat in the tyres. Again, I think that's why Bezzecchi done such a good performance. I think with the fact they can carry a bit more speed through the corners probably helps them generate a bit more heat. But everybody on a Ducati just looked like they've got no front tyre temp and was just scared to tip the bike. And I mean, Bagnaia's crash, for example, it was like he was on a pedal bike, never mind a motorbike. He was going that slow. He really was being cautious. So it was such a shame to see him hit the deck, and so strange as well. But I've given him a bit of an hard time lately as well, saying I think it's all mental, his struggles. But here, 100%, it was the front of the bike. You can't argue that. He just looked all at seas. They all did, and it was a bit of a... For the Ducati riders, it looked like a bit of a hang-on and bag the best result you can rather than push the bike and go and take the race win.
Yeah, and I think that was more the deficit of the GP25 was more visible this weekend than ever before in this season. And Pecco said Mark has been able to. He used the word hide, but I think that's a bit lost in translation. He means mask. That Mark had been able to mask the problem. He couldn't this weekend. Mark crashed out of a Sunday race 3 times in the last 5 races, basically. And Pecco afterwards, he had this damning remark that I don't feel a difference. I don't feel anything. I don't feel the difference between a soft front or a medium front, and that's damning. And prepping the show, I was thinking, like, what is the thing with this GP25? Why don't they revert to whatever Alex is riding? One weekend it is like, oh, we're riding the same bike basically. The other weekend is, oh, it's just a swing arm that's different. And going from reports from journalists that are in the paddock or at the races, and I found that there are 2 things they can't change, they can't revert. And that's one thing is that the GP25 ride height device weighs a lot less than the GP24 and is placed in a different spot within the chassis. And so that changes the balance, the balance of the bike. We can imagine that. But maybe even more severe is that despite them not going for the 25 engine, remember at preseason testing they had to decide, and they decided, oh, we're going for the 24 engine. But the 25 spec of the 24 engine, if you can still follow me, has different mounting points within the GP25 chassis and has different crankcases. So it changes the internals of the 25 spec that Marquez and Bagnaia are riding, which means that the inertia of the bike, so the speed or resistance that the pistons experience while accelerating or decelerating, is different, which apparently must have changed something for Bagnaia to make this bike numb to him. And you can't change that. It's homologated. And it's the only thing that can be the reason for the differences he experiences. And from that on, we can almost not declare the GP25 a step back from the amazing machine Alex Marquez is riding now.
They've got a real problem as well, haven't they? Especially Bagnaia, because with Mark doing so well on the bike, they've got a real concern of, does the bike have a problem and Mark's just riding around it? Or is it Bagnaia creating his own problems? He's in a real dilemma here. And unfortunately for him, that's what great riders do. And we see it in other sports as well. They can mask, and I think Bagnaia was bang on when he said that comment, they can mask issues with the machinery. So he's in a real pickle, to be fair, because what are Ducati going to do? I know if I was Ducati, would you change something when you've got a rider leading the championship and he's currently is easily the fastest on the grid, going to deliver you both championships? Or would you risk changing something on the bike which potentially could impact him but bring your second rider up slightly and actually cost you overall? I don't know. Me personally, I would leave it as bad as it sounds. Even if it was Bagnaia instead of Marquez, I would just leave it and go with whoever is delivering the results.
Yeah, and Mark hasn't ridden the 24. Bagnaia is the only rider who has raced the 24 and the 25. Remember, Marquez last season was on the 23, which on that new Michelin tire wasn't a great bike to ride, because the other 23s last season were nowhere, basically. So he's just... And before that, he was riding the Honda. So he's used to, riding flawed bikes with his supernatural talent and just make something out of it. While Bagnaia is this rider who needs to feel the machine and needs that front feeling. It's his strongest point, the hard braking, taking that speed into the corner. And it's the biggest flaw of his current bike.
Absolutely, and I think you actually touched on it, the inertia in the engine, and that is crucial for engine braking, getting the bike stopped, generating that front feel, because it's not all about the brakes, it's how you come off the brakes and start going on the throttle, and they've got this little bit of engine brakes, a lot of electronics, but you use the perfect word, the inertia. As soon as you said that, I was like, right, makes sense now, makes sense for me. And yeah, he is really, really struggling, Jules.
Yeah, you could see... That was why Silverstone was great for this as well, because you remember at the end of the race the fight between Mark Marquez and Morbidelli,
Yeah.
And you could see Morbidelli just closing in on Marquez in the really twisty bits and overtaking him there. But then on the straights, it was where Marc Marquez could re-overtake Morbidelli, and so the what's the word again? The traction and the straight line speed, GP25, yeah, thumbs up, But as soon as you need to ride those corners, especially when in a group or in a fight, and we can remember Marquez having that really big wobble in Coda when he was in this fight. It just seems like such a hard bike to ride.
Yeah, it does. I think my theory here is, I think they pretty much hit perfection with the GP24. That bike was as close to absolute perfection, and this season they have tried to better perfection. And in the end, they may have well increased the performance window. Bagnaia even said this in pre-season. He goes, okay, this is why we've gone for this spec, because we can see more potential. They've increased it, but in doing that, they've lost the rideability. And this happened in all forms of motorsport. You see all different, where not the fastest package doesn't necessarily mean it's the easiest to extract out of, and we've seen greats in all forms of motorsport ride very difficult machines and get the most out of them. I'm thinking back to the NSR 500 and Doohan staying on the Screamer versus the Big Bang that they made to try and soften the power. All the other Honda riders instantly jumped to the Big Bang, where Doohan stayed on the Screamer and could get the most out of it. I'm thinking about that sort of stuff, and it's a difficult bike. Stoner on the 2007 Ducati was the only one who could ride it and get the most out of it, and it was a rocket ship, but no one else could ride it or have the feel. Are we seeing the same thing again now with Mark on the 25 being able to hustle it and get round where other riders can't? And we know Mark is crazy at doing this, and like Jules said, yeah, he's been well. You can't exactly call the the GP23 a shed, but he basically was riding around on a shed on a wheelie bin that Honda the last couple of years and dragging it into some results. So that's crazy. So we better move on for this. This is a fascinating storyline. Now we're going to see this unfold throughout the season. Absolutely fascinating. But we are running out of time, so we're going to have some quick honourable mentions and could have been. And I want to talk about Zarco again. P2, crazy, was even thinking about going for the race win, and then he was like, nah, like I just saw Bez, and then he started to have problems with the front tyre. Absolutely incredible. Like a win and a second. He's now like elevating himself up into the championship. Absolutely amazing ride. Absolutely amazing ride. And because we're like skipping on a little bit here, we spoke about Zarco a lot in the last show, and hopefully we're going to speak about him a lot again. But I want to just touch on Danny touched on it earlier. The little Aleix versus Frankie Morbidelli spat in the first thing. Because why Aleix? Look, because I agree with Danny. He was walking off. Aleix looks like he's actually having a go at Morbidelli, but these two have got a little bit of personal history between each other. And I think what Aleix said was. Aleix, I think, was going to apologise. And I think Morbidelli essentially just accused him of intentionally taking him out. And which is, Aleix is like, that's ridiculous. Aleix was trying to give him some room. He said Aleix knew he was a little bit deep on the brakes. He knew he's just a wild card. They're quicker than me, so I'm trying to just give him a bit of room. And he made a mistake. But I think he didn't like being accused of, like you again, and just absolutely freaked out at him. And they're having had a few little pot shots in the press. So, there's a little bit of needle going on there, and there's a few sidelines. If we did have time, we're going to talk about a bit of the empty Silverstone, because look what race it delivered and a bit of crash there. I think that's a shame, but it's not going anywhere yet. But maybe we'll save that conversation for another day. So after that round then, the championship has opened up, and amazingly, Mark looking furious with himself after the race. I've never seen him so angry on the podium, looking really, well, not angry on the podium. His interview afterwards, he was more angry with himself than he was happy that he saved the weekend, that he made that mistake in the first start. But he has opened up his championship lead to 24 points now, and Bagnaia has slipped, still in third, but 72 points behind Mark. That's absolutely whopping. Morbidelli and Zarco now. Morbidelli's fourth in the championship, and Zarco now only 1 point behind in fifth. Honda in the top five in the Riders' Championship. Oh, what on earth's going on? If you just said that a year or two ago, you'd be called crazy. So something that's not very crazy is our awards at the end. And we've got a bit of anticipation on this one. So we've all agreed in our notes, none of us have put down our Rider of the Weekend, and we've left this open. So I'm going to take one for the team, and I'm going last. Jules, who was your Rider of the Weekend and why?
Okay, I'll go for Fabio. But seriously, I mean, he deserves a mention, whether it's from me or you guys. And why? Because he is a rider again that you look forward to when the weekend starts on Friday. That you look forward to seeing what he can do, because he's in the mix again. And despite all the drama and emotions and the pain we all felt, it's just really good to see him back. And it's 3 poles in a row. That's 3 races in a row with not a Ducati on pole. And you know that's a kind of performance that we need to applaud.
Excellent, good stuff. Danny, who was yours?
I am caught between two, and I'm pretty sure one of them ain't going to be yours. But I'm going to go for the easy one. I'm going to go for Bezzecchi. Fantastic good results. Great sprint, won the main race, put in a result when he needed to. Fantastic, big fan. Keep it up, Bez.
Absolutely mega. I should really give this to Zarco, but I've only just spoken about him, so I'm going to give it a bit left field, actually. And I'm going to give my Ride of the Weekend to Johan Mir, because he stayed on the bike. It's not often we get to say that. It's the first time I've seen Mir actually staying on the bike in the end and put in not a great result. Where did Mir finish in? He was 10th. So, yeah, but he stayed on the bike nonetheless. So, moving on to the moment of the weekend then. Danny, what was your moment of the weekend?
I'm going to take the rider that you should have said. Zarco round the outside of Alex Marquez at Stowe was just, what a move. Absolutely what a move. Even Hodgie on the screen's like, no, not possible. And then he just pops out the other side. Delivered it. Fantastic. I think, big fan of Zarco anyway. Like I say, that Castrol livery, for me is just from when I was a kid. I'll be honest, mainly from rallying, but it's just such a gorgeous livery. Zarco's a great rider, and keep it up, because he's doing things at the minute which is unexpected and far outperforming that bike and the rest of the Hondas.
Absolutely, can't argue with that. Jules, what was your moment of the weekend?
The TV director's choice of first showing Pecco Bagnaia throwing his arm into the air in desperation when he was in the gravel trap, and then later on when he was in his pit box, and you could just see like emptiness in his look. And if the pit that he's in couldn't be dig deeper, if it could be dig deeper, then he did it on Sunday. And let's just hope that he climbs out of it soon.
Absolutely. And you've stolen mine. That was going to be mine. It was Pecco going down, and then the look of him in the pit box. I've never seen... He changed colour. He was like this sheet white pale. It was, wow, absolutely incredible. So I've got to think of one on the spot now.
Sorry, Kyle.
And that's all right, because that brings me in. My moment of the weekend was watching Quartararo enter Brooklands, and as soon as I saw that on the onboard, and you can see him dabbing the front brake before it even got it, I was like, oh no, his rear ride height device has failed. Couldn't believe it. And the UK comms on TNT Sport as well, just no one could believe it. And Hodgson, they're all screaming no, just absolute heartbreak, and him collapsing on the side of the track is a very sad moment of the weekend for me. What's not sad are the socials, so please follow my panel. Jules, where can people get you?
You can find me on Blue Sky, and the handle is Jules on Racing.
Nice one. Danny, where can people get you?
You can find me on X, Danny Henny F1.
Awesome. And you can also follow the show on Twitter at Mr. Apex MotoGP. We'll be back again in 2 weeks' time to review Round 8, the Aragon Grand Prix of Motorland. As always, thank you very much for listening to Mr. Apex MotoGP.